Section 42 of the Endeavour Journal of Sir Joseph Banks, Journal from 25 August 1768 to 12 July 1771, by Joseph Banks. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Gail Timmerman Vaughan. Section 42, August 1770. 1770, August 1. New Guinea coast. During the night it blew as hard as ever. The day was rainy with less wind, but still not moderate enough for our undertakings. 1770, August 2. Moderate and very rainy. Great hopes that the rain is a presage of approaching moderate weather. 1770, August 3. In the morn our people were dubious about trying to get out, and I believe delayed it rather too long. At last, however, they began, and warped ahead, but desisted from their attempts after having ran the ship twice ashore. 1770, August 4. Fine calm morn. Began early and warped the ship out, after which we sailed right out, till we came to the turtle reef, where our turtlers took one turtle. Myself got some few shells, but saw many beautiful sea insects, etc. At night our people who fished caught an abundance of sharks. 1770, August 5. The turtlers were again out upon the shoal and took one turtle. At 2 we weighed, resolved to stand out as well as we could among the shoals, but before night were stopped by another shoal, which lay directly across our way. 1770, August 6. Blew so fresh that we could not move, but lay still all day, not without anxiety lest the anchor should not hold. 1770, August 7. During last night the gale had freshened much, and in the morn we found that we had drove above a league. Fortunately no shoal had in that distance taken us up, but one was in sight astern, and the ship drove fast towards it. On this another anchor was let go and much cable varied out, but even this would not stop her. Our prospect was now more melancholy than ever. The shoal was plainly to be seen, and the ship still driving gently down toward it, a sea running at the same time, which would make it impossible ever to get off, if we should be unfortunate enough to get on. Yards and topmasts were therefore got down, and everything done which could be thought of to make the ship snug, without any effect. She still drove, and the shoal we dreaded came nearer and nearer to us. The sheet anchor, our last resource, was now thought of and prepared, but fortunately for us, before we were drove to the making use of that expedient, the ship stopped and held fast, to our great joy. During the time of its blowing yesterday and today, we became certain that between us and the open sea was a ledge of rocks or reef, just the same as we had seen at the islands. No very agreeable discovery, for should that at any time join in with the mainland, we must wait for another season, when different winds from the present ones prevailed, in which case we must infallibly be short of provisions, or, if the turtle should fail us, salt provisions without bread was all we had to trust to. 1770, August 8. The night, dark as pitch, passed over not without much anxiety. Whether our anchors held or not we could not tell, and maybe might, when we least thought of it, be upon the very brink of destruction. Daylight, however, relieved us, showed us that the anchors had held, and also brought us rather more moderate weather, so that towards evening we ventured to get up yards and topmasts. 1770, August 9. Night and morning still more moderate, so that one anchor was got up, and we had great hopes of sailing on the next morn. 1770, August 10. Fine weather, so the anchor was got up and we sailed down to leeward, convinced that we could not get out the way we had tried before, and hoping there might be a passage that way. In these hopes we were much encouraged by the sight of some high islands, where we hoped the shoals would end. By 12 we were among these, and fancied that the grand or outer reef ended on one of them, so were all in high spirits. But about dinner time the people at the masthead saw, as they thought, land all around us, on which we immediately came to an anchor, resolved to go ashore, and from the hills examine whether it was so or not. The point we were upon was sandy and very barren, so it afforded very few plants, or anything else worth our observation. The sand itself, indeed, with which the whole country in a manner was covered, was infinitely fine and white, but till a glass house was built here, that would turn to no account. We had the satisfaction, however, to see that what was taken for land round us proved only a number of islands. To one very high one, about 5 leagues from the land, the captain resolved to go in the boat tomorrow, in order to see whether the grand reef had really left us or not. 1770 August 11. As proposed yesterday, the captain went today to the island, which proved 5 leagues off from the ship. I went with him. In going out we passed over 2 very large shoals, on which we saw plenty of turtle, but we had too much wind to strike any. The island itself was high. We ascended the hill, and when we were at the top saw plainly the grand reef, still extending itself parallel with the shore, at about the distance of 3 leagues from us, and 8 from the main. Through it were several channels, exactly similar to those we had seen in the islands. Through one of these we determined to go, which seemed most easy. To ascertain the practicability of it, we resolved to stay upon the island all night, and at daybreak in the morn send the boat out to sound one of them, which was accordingly done. We slept under the shade of a bush that grew on the beach, very comfortably. 1770 August 12. Great part of yesterday and all this morn, till the boat returned, I employed in searching the island. On it I found some few plants which I had not seen before. The island itself was small and barren. On it was, however, one small tract of woodland, which abounded very much with large lizards, some of which I took. Distant as this isle was from the main, the Indians had been here in their poor embarkations, sure sign that some part of the year must have very settled fine weather. We saw 7 or 8 frames of their huts, and vast piles of shells, the fish of which had, I suppose, been their food. All the houses were built upon the tops of eminences, exposed entirely to the southeast, contrary to those of the main, which are commonly placed under the shelter of some bushes or hillside to break off the wind. The officer who went in the boat returned with an account that the sea broke vastly high upon the reef, and the swell was so great in the opening that he could not go into it to sound. This was sufficient to assure us of a safe passage out, so we got into the boat to return to the ship in high spirits, thinking our danger now at an end, as we had a passage open for us to the main sea. In our return we went ashore upon a low island, where we shot many birds. On it was an eagle's nest, the young ones of which we killed, and another built on the ground by I know not what bird, of a most enormous magnitude. It was in circumference 26 feet, and in height 2 feet 8, built of sticks. The only bird I have seen in this country capable of building such a nest seems to be the pelican. The Indians have been here likewise and lived upon turtle, as we could plainly see by the heaps of calabashes which were piled up in several parts of the island. Our master, who had been sent to leeward to examine that passage, went ashore upon a low island where he slept. Here he saw vast plenty of turtle shells, and so great plenty had the Indians had when there that they had hung up the fins with the meat left on them in the trees, where the sun had dried them so well that our seamen eat them heartily. He saw also 2 spots clear of grass, which had lately been dug up. They were about 7 feet long and shaped like a grave, for which indeed he took them. 1770 August 13. Ship stood out for the opening we had seen in the reef, and about 2 o'clock passed it. It was about 1/2 a mile wide. As soon as the ship was well without it, we had no ground within 100 fathom of line, so became in an instant quite easy, being once more in the main ocean, and consequently freed from all our fears of shoals, etc. 1770 August 14. For the first time these 3 months, we were this day out of sight of land, to our no small satisfaction. That very ocean, which had formerly been looked upon with terror by, maybe, all of us, was now the asylum we had long wished for, and at last found. Satisfaction was clearly painted in every man's face. The day was fine and the trade wind brisk, before which we steered to the northward. The well-grown waves which followed the ship, sure sign of no land being in our neighbourhood, were contemplated with the greatest satisfaction. Notwithstanding, we plainly felt the effect of the blows they gave to our crazy ship, increasing her leaks considerably, so that she now made 9 inches water every hour. This, however, was looked upon as a light evil in comparison to those we had so lately made our escape from. 1770 August 15. Fine weather and moderate trade. The captain fearful of going too far from the land, lest we should miss an opportunity of examining whether or not the passage, which is laid down in some charts, between New Holland and New Guinea really existed or not, steered the ship west, right in for the land. About 12 o'clock it was seen from the masthead, and about 1 the reef laying without it in just the same manner as when we left it. He stood on, however, resolving to stand off at night, after having taken a nearer view, but just at nightfall found himself in a manner embayed in the reef, so that it was a moot point whether or not he could weather it on either tack. We stood, however, to the northward, and at dark it was concluded that she would go clear of everything we could see. The night, however, was not the most agreeable. All the dangers we had escaped were little in comparison of being thrown upon this reef, if that should be our lot. A reef such as this one, as I now speak of, is a thing scarcely known in Europe, or indeed anywhere but in these seas. It is a wall of coral rock, rising almost perpendicularly out of the unfathomable ocean, always overflown at high water, commonly 7 or 8 feet, and generally bare at low water. The large waves of the vast ocean, meeting with so sudden a resistance, make here a most terrible surf, breaking mountain high, especially when, as in our case, the general trade wind blows directly upon it. 1770, August 16. At 3 o'clock this morn it dropped calm on a sudden, which did not at all better our situation. We judged ourselves not more than 4 or 5 leagues from the reef, maybe much less, and the swell of the sea, which drove right in upon it, carried the ship toward it fast. We tried the lead often in hopes to find ground, that we might anchor, but in vain. Before 5, the roaring of the surf was plainly heard, and as day broke, the vast foaming billows were plainly enough to be seen, scarce a mile from us, and towards which we found the ship carried by the waves surprisingly fast, so that by 6 o'clock we were within a cable's length of them, driving on as fast as ever, and still no ground with 100 fathoms of line. Every method had been taken since we first saw our danger to get the boats out in hopes that they might tow us off, but it was not yet accomplished. The pinnace had had a plank stripped off her for repair, and the longboat under the booms was lashed and fastened so well from our supposed security that she was not yet got out. 2 large oars or sweeps were got out at the stern ports to pull the ship's head round the other way, in hopes that they might delay till the boats were out. All this while we were approaching, and came, I believe, before this could be effected, within 40 yards of the breaker. The same sea that washed the side of the ship rose in a breaker enormously high the very next time it did rise, so between us and it was only a dismal valley the breadth of one wave. Even now the lead was hove 3 or 4 times, lengthened together, but no ground could be felt with above 150 fathom. Now was our case truly desperate. No man, I believe, but who gave himself entirely over, a speedy death was all we had to hope for, and that from the vastness of the breakers, which must quickly dash the ship all to pieces, was scarcely to be doubted. Other hopes we had none. The boats were in the ship, and must be dashed in pieces with her, and the nearest dry land was 8 or 10 leagues distant. We did not, however, cease our endeavours to get out the long boat, which was by this time almost accomplished. At this critical juncture, at this, I must say, terrible moment, when all assistance seemed too little to save even our miserable lives, a small air of wind sprang up, so small that at any other time in a calm we should not have observed it. We, however, plainly saw that it instantly checked our progress. Every sail was therefore put in a proper direction to catch it, and we just observed the ship to move in a slanting direction, off from the breakers. This at least gave us time, and redoubling our efforts, we at last got out the longboat, and manning her, sent her ahead. The ship still moved a little off, but in less than 10 minutes our little breeze died away into as flat a calm as ever. Now was our anxiety again renewed. Innumerable small pieces of paper, etc., were thrown over the ship's side to find whether the boats really moved her ahead or not, and so little did she move that it remained almost every other time a matter of dispute. Our friendly little breeze now visited us again, and lasted as long as before, thrusting us possibly 100 yards farther from the breakers. We were still, however, in the very jaws of destruction. A small opening had been seen in the reef about a furlong from us. Its breadth was scarce the length of the ship. Into this, however, it was resolved to push her if possible. Within was no surf, therefore we might save our lives. The doubt was only whether we could get the ship so far. Our little breeze, however, a 3rd time visited us, and pushed us almost there. The fear of death is bitter. The prospect we now had before us of saving our lives, though at the expense of everything we had, made my heart set much lighter on its throne, and I suppose there were none but what felt the same sensations. At length we arrived off the mouth of the wished-for opening, and found to our surprise what had, with the little breeze, been the real cause of our escape, a thing that we had not before dreamt of. The tide of flood it was that had hurried us so unaccountably fast toward the reef, in the near neighbourhood of which we arrived just at high water. Consequently, its ceasing to drive us any farther gave us the opportunity we had of getting off. Now, however, the tide of ebb made strong and gushed out of our little opening like a mill stream, so that it was impossible to get in. Of this stream, however, we took the advantage as much as possible, and it carried us out near a quarter of a mile from the reef. We well knew that we were to take all the advantage possible of the ebb, so continued towing with all our might, and with all our boats, the pinnace now being repaired, till we had got an offing of 1½ or 2 miles. By this time the tide began to turn, and our suspense began again. As we had gained so little while the ebb was in our favour, we had some reason to imagine that the flood would hurry us back upon the reef, in spite of our utmost endeavours. It was still as calm as ever, so no likelihood of any wind to-day. Indeed, had wind sprung up, we could only have searched for another opening, for we were so embayed by the reef that with the general trade wind it was impossible to get out. Another opening was however seen ahead, and the first lieutenant went away in the small boat to examine it. In the meantime we struggled hard with the flood, sometimes gaining a little, then holding only our own, and at other times losing a little, so that our situation was almost as bad as ever, as the flood had not yet come into its strength. At 2, however, the lieutenant arrived with news that the opening was very narrow. In it was good anchorage, and a passage quite in, free from shoals. The ship's head was immediately put toward it, and with the tide she towed fast, so that by 3 we entered, and were hurried in by a stream almost like a mill race, which kept us from even a fear of the sides, though it was not above 1/4 of a mile in breadth. By 4 we came to an anchor, happy once more to encounter those shoals, which but 2 days before we thought ourselves supremely happy to have escaped from. How little do most men know what is for their real advantage! 2 days ago our utmost wishes were crowned by getting without the reef, and to-day we were again made happy by getting within it. 1770 August 17. As we were now safe at an anchor, it was resolved to send the boats upon the nearest shoal to search for shellfish, turtle, or whatever else they could get. They accordingly went, and Dr. Solander and myself accompanied them in my small boat. In our way we met with 2 water snakes, one 5, the other 6 feet long. We took them both. They much resembled land snakes, only their tails were flattened sideways, I suppose for the convenience of swimming, and were not venomous. The shoal we went upon was the very reef we had so near been lost upon yesterday, now no longer terrible to us. It afforded little provision for the ship, no turtle, only 300 pound of great cockles. Some were, however, of an immense size. We had in the way of curiosity much better success, meeting with many curious fish and mollusca, besides corals of many species, all alive, among which was the tubipora musica. I have often lamented that we had not time to make proper observations upon this curious tribe of animals, but we were so entirely taken up with the more conspicuous links of the chain of creation, as fish, plants, birds, etc., etc., that it was impossible. 1770 August 18. Weighed and stood along shore with a gentle breeze. The main still 7 or 8 leagues from us. In the even many shoals were ahead. We were, however, fortunate enough to find our way through them, and at night anchored under an island. The tide here ran immensely strong, which we looked upon as a good omen. So strong a stream must in all probability have an outlet by which we could get out either on the south or north side of New Guinea. The smoothness of the water, however, plainly indicated that the reef continued between us and the ocean. 1770 August 19. Weighed anchor and steered as yesterday with a fresh trade wind. All morn were much entangled with shoals, but so much do great dangers swallow up lesser ones, that these once so much dreaded shoals were now looked at with much less concern than formerly. At noon we passed along a large shoal, on which the boats which were ahead saw many turtle, but it blew too fresh to catch them. We were now tolerably near the main, which appeared low and barren, and often interspersed with large patches of the very white sand spoke of before. On a small island, which we passed very near to, were 5 natives, 2 of whom carried their lances in their hands. They came down upon a point and looked at the ship for a little while, and then retired. 1770 August 20. Steering along shore as usual, among many shoals, luffing up some and bearing away others. We were now pretty well experienced in their appearances, so as seldom to be deceived, and easily to know asunder a bottom coloured by white sand from a coral rock, the former of which, though generally in 12 or 14 fathom water, some time ago gave us much trouble. The reef was still supposed to be without us, from the smoothness of our water. The mainland appeared very low and sandy, and had many fires upon it, more than we had usually observed. We passed during the day many low sandy islands, every one of which stood upon a large shoal. We have constantly found the best passage to lie near the main, and the farther from that you go near the reef, the more numerous are the shoals. In the evening we observed the shoals to decrease in number, but we still were in smooth water. 1770, August 21. Running along shore with charming moderate weather, as indeed we have had ever since our second entering the reef. We observed both last night and this morn that the main looked very narrow, so we began to look out for the passage we expected to find between New Holland and New Guinea. At noon one was seen very narrow, but appeared to widen. We resolved to try it, so stood in. In passing through, for it was not more than a mile in length before it widened very much, we saw 10 Indians standing on a hill. 9 were armed with lances, as we had been used to see them. The 10th had a bow and arrows. 2 also had large ornaments of mother-of-pearl shell hung round their necks. After the ship had passed by, 3 followed her, one of whom was the bowman. We soon came abreast, from whence we concluded we might not have a much better view than from our masthead. So the anchor was dropped, and we prepared ourselves to go ashore to examine whether the place we stood into was a bay or a passage. For as we sailed right before the trade wind, we might find difficulty in getting out, should it prove to be the former. The 3 Indians placed themselves upon the beach opposite to us, as if resolved either to oppose or assist our landing. When, however, we came about musket shot from them, they all walked leisurely away. The hill we were upon was by much the most barren we had been upon. It, however, gave us the satisfaction of seeing a strait, at least as far as we could see, without any obstruction. In the even a strong tide made us almost certain. 1770, August 22. In the morn 3 or 4 women appeared upon the beach gathering shellfish. We looked with our glasses, and to us they appeared as they always did, more naked than our mother Eve. The ebb ran out so strong that we could not wade till near noon. We had the wind variable from north to west, the first time since we got the trade. Before we had proceeded far, we met with a shoal, which made us come to an anchor. 1770, August 23. In the morn calm. At 9, however, a small breeze sprang up, on which we weighed, and sailed through a channel which had been found during the calm. At noon we were abreast of an island which was white with the dung of birds. As we had little wind, the ship was brought to. We went ashore upon it, and shot boobies till our ammunition was quite expended. I myself botanized and found some plants which I had not seen before. After we came on board, the winds were variable, and soon after calm and very hot. Water still continued very shoal, but the swell, which ran larger than any we had met with within the reef, gave us great hope. 1770, August 24. Swell continued, and in the morn the best bower cable was broke in weighing by it. The whole day was spent in fruitless attempts to recover the anchor, though there was no more than 8 fathom water. 1770, August 25. This morn, by the first sweep, the anchor was recovered, and we soon got under sail and lost sight of land, with only 9 fathom water. At dinner met shoals, which made us anchor again. In the eve, however, found a passage out, and sailed clear enough of them. 1770, August 26. Fine weather, and clear fresh trade. Stood to the west, and deepened our water from 13 to 27. At night many eggbirds coming from the west. 1770, August 27. Lay to all last night. In the morn fresh trade and fine clear weather made us hope that our difficulties were drawing to a period. It was now resolved to haul up to the northward, in order to make the coast of New Guinea, in order to assure ourselves that we had really got clear of the South Sea, which was accordingly done. At dinner time we were alarmed afresh by the usual report of a shoal just ahead. It proved, however, to be no more than a bank or regular layer of a brownish colour, extending itself upon the sea, which indeed had very much the appearance of a shoal while at a distance. It was formed by innumerable small atoms, each scarce 1/2 a line in length, yet when looked at in the microscope consisting of 30 or 40 tubes, each hollow and divided through the whole length into many cells by small partitions like the tubes of confervus. To which of the 3 kingdoms of nature they belong I am totally ignorant. I only guess that they are of a vegetable nature, because on burning them I could perceive no animal smell. We have before this, during this voyage, seen them several times on the coast of Brazil and that of New Holland, but never that I recollect at any considerable distance from the land. In the evening a small bird of the noddy (sterna) kind hovered much about the ship, and at night settled on the rigging where he was taken, and proved exactly the same bird as Dampier has described and given a rude figure of, under the name of a noddy from New Holland. See his Voyages, Volume 3, page 98, tab of birds, figure 5. 1770, August 28. Still standing to the northward, the water shoaling regularly. Vast quantities of the little substances mentioned yesterday floating upon the water in large lines, a mile or more long, and 50 or 100 yards wide, all swimming either immediately upon the surface of the water or not many inches under it. The seamen, who are now convinced that it was not, as they had thought, the spawn of fish, began to call it sea sawdust, a name certainly not ill adapted to its appearance. One of them, a Portuguese, who came on board the ship at Rio de Janeiro, told me that at San Salvador, on the coast of Brazil, where the Portuguese have a whale fishery, he had often seen vast quantities of it taken out of the stomachs of whales or grampuses there taken. In the afternoon the soundings became most irregular, starting sometimes at once from 18 to 7 fathoms. At 4 the land was seen from the masthead, but at sunset was not seen from the deck. During the night we stood off and on, far from satisfied with our soundings. 1770, August 29. During the whole night our soundings were as irregular as they had been in the even, but never less than 7, and never so shoal for any time. In the morn the land was seen from the deck, which was uncommonly low, but covered very thick with wood. At 8 it was not more than 2 leagues from us, but the water had gradually shoaled since morn to 5 fathom, and was at this time as muddy as the river Thames, so it was thought not prudent to go any nearer at present, and accordingly we stood along shore, seeing fires here and there, large groves of cocoa-nut trees, in the neighbourhood of which we supposed the Indian villages to be situated. In the eve, though we kept the same distance from the land, we got into less than 4 fathom, and we got upon a wind. We were very long before we could deepen it. The bank, however, which was soft mud, proved inimitably regular. 1770, August 30. In the morn, though the ship was in less than 7 fathom water, the land was but just seen from the deck. We sailed along shore, however, in about that depth, the bank as regular as usual. In the even a large fire was seen ashore. At night, of a sudden, went away to the northward. We now judged ourselves to be about the place called in the draughts Falche Cap, and supposed this to be it. Both yesterday and today vast quantities of the sea sawdust was seen. Some of our people observed that on passing through a bed of it much larger than common, they smelt an uncommon stink, which they supposed to proceed from it. 1770, August 31. 5 1/2 fathom, and the land not seen even from the masthead. The regularity of the bank, which was soft mud, made us very little regard the shoalness of the water, which was still as muddy as the Thames at Gravesend. At night we anchored in 4 1/2 fathom, the land being then but just seen from the deck. End of section 42. August, 1770.